Hi, and welcome to the Changing Perspectives podcast, the show where we discuss a variety of topics including grief, parenting, health and wellness, and relationships. Join us and explore a number of changing perspectives. We're your hosts, Jenni and Josh Brennan. Hey, Jenni.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I know you're tired. It's been a long week already.
I am. That's true.
This is episode 22 and the third installment of Changing Perspectives this week.
Oh, okay. I was very confused.
This week.
Yeah.
And happy Thursday, everybody. So we are excited for you guys.
Dude, if I make it to Thursday, I'll be so happy.
I know. Well, it's Thursday. By the time people are listening to this, it's Thursday, and it's almost the weekend.
Okay.
Right?
All right. That's inspiring.
And exciting stuff coming up for this weekend. We have our first ever state championship track meet.
Yeah, we really need clones because this weekend we have a wood bat tournament. And at the same exact time, 2.5 hours away, we have a child in a state track meet for the long jump. And the same time, an hour away from that, both of our children have flag football.
Yep.
And I think that's it. Then we have a second day of the tournament.
And that's just Saturday.
That's just Saturday.
And I'm still
I don't know how we're going to make that work. Hopefully by Thursday we'll have it figured out.
Remember when they were just both playing baseball? And during the spring on
T-ball.
2 teams, it was like twice a week.
Yeah.
You and I were like doing our other stuff, and now it's like crazy town. And this spring we have 2 brand new sports to our family, which we're still getting used to, track and lacrosse.
Right.
Still trying to get used
to
the lingo.
Oh, yes, that's right. We have lacrosse this weekend, too.
Oh, yeah, Sunday's lacrosse.
Yeah.
Wow. So anyway.
Oh, boy.
But it's Thursday. It's almost the weekend, so Happy Thursday, everybody. Don't forget to like us, review us, and follow us, guys. Check out our previous episodes. Again, this is the third one for this week, so lots of changing perspectives. We have lots of exciting stuff coming up in changing. Am I keeping you awake?
You are.
A big yawn. I'm proud of you for taking the mic away from your mouth, though, so you didn't tell everybody that you were yawning. It's okay. You're allowed to yawn. Lots of exciting stuff coming up with Changing Perspectives. We're going to be joining our friend Gerald sometime in the near future on Pop Culture Cosmos to discuss some pop culture stuff, some Game of Thrones, I think, and some other exciting things coming up. We have some more interviews planned, lots of good topics. Once again, just a reminder, email us, message us, reach out to us, and let us know your thoughts. We will read them over the air. One more exciting thing before we jump into today's topic. You'll find on Dizzy Bird Studios on Facebook, facebook.com/Dizzy Bird Studios. There is a pinned post at the top of the page that says listener questions. You can submit jokes, comments, questions, whatever you want.
Can I submit jokes?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
Anybody can.
Okay. And
we will read those over the air. So that's a new segment. Before we're done recording, I will check the page to see if anybody's said anything. It just went up today, or actually by the time you hear this, would have been for a couple days, but I'll see if we have any submissions and I'll read them over the air. So that's on Dizzy Bird Studios on Facebook.
I'm going to go submit a bunch, including this new one. What is a superhero's favorite part of the joke?
What is it?
The punchline.
The punchline. That's good. Is that, where did you hear that one?
The little insurance company that has a punny joke once a month on their little sign out front.
A punny joke. That was very meta.
That's what it is. It's always some pun.
It is.
Where does a snowman keep his money?
In the snowbank?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
They bring me joy. They're like one day a month that it's changed to something new. Someday I'm going to get in a car accident because I'm always driving back with my iced tea from Dunkin' Donuts, and you have to read both sides of the sign. So I totally approached the intersection, turned around.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you haven't gotten in any sort of a car accident while you're trying to see the funny joke of the month.
Yeah.
But that was fun. I like that superhero one.
Yeah, so I'm going to go write them on your page.
Yeah, so check that out, everybody. We want lots of listener interaction with Changing Perspectives, so go check that out. So what are we talking about today, Jenni?
Grief. Yeah.
It's like we've never talked about that before.
I realized that we've never actually talked about we've talked about children's grief and how to kind of help children when they're grieving. And we've talked about how to support other people when they're grieving. And we've talked about how to support grief in the schools, but we've never actually really talked about what to do when you're grieving.
You're right, we haven't.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. We just
Seems like it was a little backwards.
It was a little backwards.
Maybe.
Yeah. And so this is kind of like, this is sort of what I do, right? A lot of my patients come to me because they're grieving and they come for grief counseling. And my goal is to, I'm still froggy. My goal is to have my first book done by the end of next month.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's going to happen now.
We'll see.
Maybe I'll take a bus to the state track meet this weekend instead of driving, and I could work on it then.
Yeah. A working commute.
Yeah. But that's the topic of it, is sort of supporting your own grief.
Right.
So, it seems like it was about time to do that for an episode here.
I agree. Where can folks find your article? I know that it's on Medium, right? It's entitled "Am I Normal? How to Manage Your Grief This Summer." Is that the right article for today?
That is, well, yes. The original article actually was about managing your grief during the holidays, and was probably one of my most popular. It was one of my most popular articles from a few years ago, and it was shared like 5,000 times. Over 5,000 times. It had a really big response right around like the Thanksgiving, Christmas holidays. But as I was looking back over it recently, I realized, these tips are universal tips, and it's not just around the holidays. So I sort of use that as the foundation. So you can find that original article on my website,
changingperspectivesblog.com.
Yeah. And then I think if you click either the category grief or the category holidays, it will take you there. Or the newer version is up on Medium. So if you go to my Instagram page, or our Instagram page,
Changing Perspectives on Instagram.
And then you go to the bio, there's a link, the only sort of clickable link. You can't really put clickable links in Instagram very easily. So there's one in my profile. And if you click that will take you sort of to a tree of links. Linktree. And there you will have a link to our blog, to our podcast, and to my Medium articles as well. And then if whatever new article I have out, I always try to pop that up there as its own link too. So awesome. That's a good way to navigate all that stuff.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to sort of introduce us to your article a little bit and how we're going to sort of tackle managing your own grief today?
Yeah, you're going to read the tips and I'm going to talk about them like we always do.
It's like we've never done that before. Well, I wanted to sort of start off with, how you start the article off when you talk about, I'm just going to read, I like to quote you.
Okay.
But I'm going to quote you.
I appreciate that because listen, when I write things, I don't know, maybe other readers can relate to this. It's like an out of body experience.
Yeah. And
stuff's kind of clinking around in my head and then it needs to come out. It gets on paper and I totally forget what I said. Right. Like it becomes its own like living, breathing thing. Right. So I don't remember what I've said. So I appreciate when you quote me because that jogs my memory.
Okay. So you're right. As a grief therapist, I spend many of my days sharing space with people who are grieving. So often they look at me with tears in their eyes and ask questions like, am I normal? What's wrong with me? Why can't I just enjoy the life I have?
So true. Yeah, I think anyone that comes to see me for grief therapy or goes anywhere for grief therapy, those are some of the biggest questions that they have. Right. Whether they are coming to grief therapy like a week after their loss or a decade after their loss, they're still feeling like, I'm still sad. So there must be something wrong with me. Because we've talked about this message that we send, we collectively as a society, that like when someone dies, you should get over them pretty quickly. Yeah. Get over it. Move on. Don't talk about it.
It's not a thing.
It's not a thing. Don't make me uncomfortable. And it's just not true. So 99% of the time when people come in and say, am I normal? My answer is yes. Yes, you are. And when they say, what's wrong with me? My answer is nothing. This is grief. And when they say, why can't I just enjoy the life I have? I say something along the lines of, because the life you have now is totally different than the life you had before the loss. And this is brand new for you.
Right.
And it's hard. I don't think people know how to grieve. Yeah. We've never been taught that. We've been taught sort of through movies and TV and our society sending us the message that you cry maybe at the funeral if you're a family and your culture kind of allows it, and you miss 3 days of work, because sort of the standard here in America is you get 3 days of bereavement if it's a family member, right. Not your best friend, not your boyfriend, not your girlfriend, your husband, or a sort of first branch of your family tree. You get bereavement leave.
Right.
That's crazy to me.
No, it is. And I think that some organizations qualify. I know the organization I work for, I think they do a fairly okay job with bereavement. There's, and I don't know if it's just my organization or whatever, but I think that like you get 5 days if it's immediate family, 3 if it's like extended, and they actually list and quote relationships like aunt. I don't know why I just said aunt, but aunt, uncle, whatever. Might even have like friend or affinity relationships listed. So maybe, hopefully, some organizations are doing a better job at defining that and trying to meet folks' needs.
Yeah. It's still also kind of archaic and weird to me that organizations would assume
define your length of
that would assume that your grief is going to be bigger or somehow more justifiably used as an excuse to miss work if it was a family member, someone who's close to you blood-wise.
Or just official relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
That just seems really archaic to me. Yeah. And so a lot of people don't even ask for the bereavement time. Mm-hmm. They don't sort of argue that policy because it feels funny to them.
Right. Well, the other, this comes up a fair amount too, because as a manager, I have to be privy to those types of policies to help my employees, when I have a loss. But what happens is when you've got like the loss of your spouse's family member, right?
Yeah.
And now you're responsible you have to run the household to take care of the kids because your spouse is dealing with a loss, and they're helping plan a funeral, whatever. It's, there's a lot that you have to manage when it's not, technically your family's loss,
Yeah, but it is your family's like it's just weird. Right. There's these definitions and these sort of arbitrary 3 days or 5 days, because 3 days, I guess, grows out of the we used to do awake for 2 nights, right? We do awake, a funeral.
I was just gonna say that.
I think that's where it originates from. Sort of the sort of Irish Catholic, Northern European wake funeral.
We're giving you the time off to do the stuff that you're supposed to do.
Right, but not time off.
Funeral, and we'll see you back on Monday.
Yeah, you could take a day after the funeral.
Yeah.
But not time to plan all that stuff or to get together the storyboard or to spend time with your family. Or we are living in a society now where it's very rare that a family remains in one town. I think the town we're in is kind of an anomaly.
It is.
But people,
lifetime townies.
But a lot. Well, but if you think about the lifetime townies that live in the town that we're in now, even those families, most of them have a member of the family who has left the area. So not entire families are in one sort of centralized geographical location anymore. So you've got to fly in for things. That takes timing, that takes coordination, and also you're grieving, you're in shock, you're dealing with everything. And so what happens is people have to choose, do I use my bereavement time for the wake and the funeral, or do I use it beforehand? So a lot of people are still kind of feeling like they have to work, or more places are getting okay with people working from home. So they're working from home while they're planning a funeral, planning a memorial service. They're working, there's just
competing priorities.
Yeah. There's just not a lot of space provided for that. So this is where that message comes from. When people then come to me and say, am I normal? It's because even their employers, everyone around them is sending this message that 3 days and then you move on with your life. Right? It's this magical 3-day number, and then you get over it. But death is a transition. And when we think about transitioning into life, there is maternity leave. And more organizations are now providing paternity leave and leave if you are adopting a child. That leave isn't 3 days. It's not 5 days.
No.
We're talking 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Because you're adjusting to a new life, but we don't give that same...
Even most paternity leaves are a month.
Right. They're 4 weeks. But if you lose someone and you're grieving, get back to work in 3 days. Yeah. Right. Like you can take Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, be back Thursday. And I get that, I guess. The company still has to operate, but I would argue, and I'd love to hear from our listeners overseas. I think a lot of European countries have more flexible, and Canada have more flexible leave benefits around things like this. So there's this message here in America, like toughen up, get over it. And so people come to grief counseling because they're feeling like something is wrong with them because they're still hurting, they're still grieving, yet everyone around them is sending them these overt, and sometimes, sort of subtle messages. So subtle and not so subtle messages to get over it. And they don't understand why they can't get over it. So most of the times when people walk into my office, they've got this ball of anxiety and guilt on their shoulders. They feel like they're a freak, like something's wrong with them.
Right.
They're ashamed. And by the end of the session, they're feeling so much lighter because they've been given space to talk about it.
Well, you had asked the question in the article before you dove into the tips. How do you mourn your deceased loved one while still having to navigate a world that is pressuring you to move on and find closure? And you say it isn't easy, but there are some tips to make it not quite so impossible. So let's go ahead and dive into those.
You know what? I'm going to tie this to reality TV again, which I often do. You won't know this, but I was grading today, and I always like to have like TV on in the background when I grade, because if I'm doing work and it's totally silent, I can't function. I need sort of that background noise. So I had on the Real Housewives of New York City.
Oh, of course you did.
Yeah. You don't watch that one with me, but Bethany Frankel and her, like her boy.
Did you say New York?
Yeah. Her like on again, off again boyfriend, her person.
Listen, if I have to watch,
you're going to watch that one.
Real Housewives, I choose New York.
So her person, they had conflict in their relationship.
Like 3 of my guy friends.
Okay. Her person, they were actually like secretly engaged. He died of a drug overdose. And the episode that I had on in the background, I haven't watched it in a long time, really centered around that. And actually she met with a grief therapist for the first time. And
Bethany
he was,
did?
and he was she knew nothing about how to grieve. And really what he did in that was give her permission to grieve, and he normalized the process for her. And she really felt better at the end of it. But watching her friends, I guess, quote unquote friends, sort of off camera talk about her loss, they were really minimizing it, saying like things like, I don't know why she's so upset. They weren't really that close, or they were struggling anyways, or, she's out having fun. So I guess she's not too sad. She doesn't miss him too much. And I was thinking, that's really the message that's out there. If people are seeing their friend, she actually was going on a date, and people are like, well, how could she go on a date if she says she's so sad that she lost this person that's really important to her? Grief is messy and complicated, and there is no pathway. And it's really damaging when people's friends are out there making judgments like that. And there it is, right on like the TV, right? Anyone could be watching that thinking like, oh, see, my friends are going to think that about me if I lose someone important to me, and then I go out to a concert and I have fun.
Right.
I forgot how I got there with this story, but I wanted to tie it into what we're talking about.
Well, I think you tied it in just fine.
Oh, thanks. What was my point, though?
Well, I talked about
how do you mourn the loss of your loved one when the world's giving you this pressure?
Exactly.
Right. So she's really getting this pressure to sort of move on, and she's someone that's very much in the public eye. And there's definitely like pressure around all of that for her to move on and sort of grieve the right way.
Yeah, we
right?
see
Like
it
people
everywhere.
have opinions.
We see it everywhere. We talked about that in What Not to Say, that episode, when you've got...
Gosh, that feels so long ago.
It was.
Yeah.
Like a month. You got people that say something like, how are you holding up? All right. And when we ask that question, we want the person to say they're fine.
Right.
Like that.
Right.
We hope that there's, even if you don't know, you hope that part of you hopes that, right?
Because we don't really know how to best support people.
Hopefully after you've listened to Changing Perspectives for a while, you've got some tips. But, we want them to say that they're better.
Right.
But we are focusing today on how you yourself can manage your grief and navigate a world where there's folks around you wanting you to say you're doing better. And the first tip in Jenni's article, and what we're going to discuss today, is reconnect to the memory of your loved one. So what's that all about, Jenni?
Right. So we have this message, right, to move on, to heal, to find closure, to let go. Notice the article title is not like how to move on, how to find closure, how to let go, how to like live a new life. That's not the title of the article, right? It's managing your grief. It's not healing your grief. It's not getting rid of your grief. Look, if you lose someone important to you, your grief now is a constant companion for you. Mm-hmm. There was a movie that kind of likened it to a rock that you carry with you forever. And sometimes that rock is a boulder and it's heavy and you can't get out of bed. And sometimes it's just a little pebble, like, it's there, it's in your pocket and you can feel it, but it's not weighing you down. And I really like that analogy. It's always something. Actually. Yeah. And that's what grief is. So there's this pressure when society is giving you the message to move on, to let go, to find closure, to not be connected to your loved one, to somehow forget them. Yeah. And that's really really what you need to do. One of the things you need to do is to remember them, to find a way to reconnect to them, to find a way to sort of find space for them in your life, something that's going to be meaningful to you, to have them in your life.
So what are some of those ways that someone can find?
It's different for everyone. Some people will do something like plant a tree. Mm-hmm. Your mom, I think the tree in her front yard, didn't your grandfather plant that or wasn't it? So I think that's like a connection. Mm-hmm. There's lots of people. We have friends who, when they lost their daughter, they then created a garden in their backyard. That is her garden. And they visit that regularly. Their other kids kind of go out there and play with that. That's their connection, or one of their connections to her. I have my grandmother's necklace that I wear. Mm-hmm. A few weeks ago, a patient of mine she didn't come to me for grief therapy, came to me for other issues. And in the course of our work together, she had a loss. And so came to me for the second time after the loss had happened. And she very shamefully told me that now she has a necklace with her loved one's ashes. Like, she said it like it was something dirty.
Really?
Yeah. Because, and so that was a way for her and her family to feel connected to their loved one, is to sort of wear the ashes of their loved one. Yeah. And it is a new thing that we're seeing in the funeral industry. Right. Like, you can have your loved one's ashes pressed into beautiful jewelry, beautiful sculptures, beautiful urns, beautiful anything. Mm-hmm. But jewelry, rings, necklaces, earrings. And how nice is that to, have that close to your heart? I know moms that have lost really, the infants, babies, and have little necklaces of their baby's handprint that they wear. So like wearing those things day to day and not being afraid if someone says, "Oh, that necklace is beautiful," not being afraid to say, "Thanks, it's actually the handprint of my daughter. She died when she was 1." Yeah. Just to
That's powerful.
Yeah, to not forget about them. So those are some ways. Also, maybe it's something like volunteering at their favorite charity, or cooking a meal that they love, or lighting a candle in their memory, celebrating their birthday, really kind of just incorporating them into your life, talking about them, not being afraid to like bring up their name and make people feel sad when you bring up their name.
We talked about that and what not to say, because we find time and time again, and you can speak more on this, but I find it too in the field that I work in, but folks who want to talk about their loved ones, they're just the people that passed away and died. They want to talk about them. They want to bring them up and discuss their life. And I want to give a quick sort of shout out to the field that I work in, organ and tissue donation. We talk about reconnecting to the memory of your loved one. Donor families really often find that the legacy of their loved one, the gift that they gave to someone else, the recipient, and all of the activities that sort of come with that could come with that. It's up to donor families how involved they get. But it helps them reconnect. Most organ tissue donation organizations have a program that helps donor families stay connected, have donor family ceremonies, have different ways you can honor your loved one, creating different, memory quilts, or being involved in a walk, like a Donate Life walk or something like that. All those different activities help these families stay connected to their loved one and their loved one's gift, which I think can be really powerful for some folks.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all great examples. There's no like one cookie cutter approach to how you can sort of reconnect to the memory of your loved one. What's important is that you figure out what works for you and what's meaningful for you. How do you want to find space for your loved one in your life?
I really like the way you end this paragraph. Instead, embrace your memories of them, talk about them, say their name, and say it often.
Yeah, own it. Like it's, the tendency is to try to forget them, try to not talk about them. And then that creates this discord, this disconnect. And that's when people really start to feel lousy, because they're having this pressure, that they kind of initially receive externally and then they put on themselves internally to try to forget about them, when really what they naturally need to do is talk about them and think about them and really incorporate their memory into their life in a meaningful way, because they lived. They were a part of your life.
Yes.
It didn't just not happen.
Right. We don't want to forget them.
Right.
Okay. Tip number two. In managing your grief is allow yourself to feel. What does that mean?
So I think so often people have this pressure that they put on themselves to not emote, to not show emotions, right? To be strong. People will say to them, stay strong, hang in there. So for what they interpret that is don't cry, don't express anger, don't express guilt, don't express any ambivalent feelings, just be happy. And pretend like nothing is bothering you. But that's not grief. And they really are feeling. And there's so many feelings that can come up when you lose someone. And they can all come up at the same time, or you can kind of sort of stay stuck in one for a while. But what you need to do is really, really feel those feelings. There's theorists that believe that you can't really kind of move through your grieving process until you feel all of the feelings of grief, until you sort of process the pain of grief and all of the emotions that come with it. And some of those emotions are ugly and they're hard to feel. And so what I tell folks is to allow yourself to be prepared for those things to catch you off guard.
What I was going to say, so what happens? You talked about this in the article. What happens if you try to bottle up all of your feelings?
Oh, I say they come out sideways.
Yeah.
So if you are, trying to be strong and you're kind of constantly pushing your feelings down, anytime you think of your loved one, you kind of just, you shove that down and you kind of fall into the distractions of work or your kids or whatever else going on in your life. Those feelings are still there and they need to come out. If they don't come out, they're going to make you physically ill. You're going to have physical symptoms of it. This is a proven fact. There's been lots of scientific research that shows that our emotions, when we're not processing them, can become physical. So too can our physical stuff kind of become emotional. But they'll come out. So then, when the person in front of you at the grocery store puts 13 items on the belt in the 12 item or less line and you lose your mind on them, that's maybe because you're bottling up your grief feelings. Or someone cuts you off and you get all road ragey on them. Probably your grief speaking. Or you spill something, you drop creamer in the kitchen and then you start sobbing. It's probably not about the creamer. It's those feelings that have to come out. And
Depends on the creamer.
I always tell people to sort of be prepared. So recently I had a patient that came in and the loss was relatively new and they were saying, I feel kind of good. Like a person had been sick for a while. So there was this sort of sense of relief when the individual had finally passed away. They weren't suffering anymore. And the initial session that I saw them after that, again, someone who had been with me for something else, and then the loss happened. Another good reason to have a therapist. Yes. We already had that rapport established. So they were saying, I feel pretty good. Like, I think I'm going to be okay. And I said, well, let's just be prepared, because these feelings have a way of creeping up on us and we don't even know. Mm-hmm. So some of the feelings you may find yourself experiencing are, you may start crying, you may start getting really angry, you may feel really depressed, you may feel really kind of unmotivated. Right. You may feel guilt. Any of these feelings and more could come up. If they do, they're normal. And I want you to allow yourself to feel them without judgment. I don't want you to think, what's wrong with me? Is something wrong with me? And I said, and I don't want you to be surprised if they happen. You might just wake up one morning and suddenly you're not feeling good anymore. Or you may hear a song on the radio or watch a commercial on the TV or smell, someone's perfume in Target. There's a Target mention for this episode.
It's got to be some sort of podcast record about how many times you mentioned Target. We haven't talked about the dogs yet, but
yeah, well, you just did.
Yeah.
And then the next week, this person came back and said, "You were right. I'm so sad," and it just came out of nowhere.
I think it's important that you preface that so you're sort of prepared that person to be ready to.
Oh, so I did prepare that person, but when they walked through the door, they still felt really guilty for feeling that way. They felt like they were, damaged goods, and they were feeling really guilty. They said, "What am I going to do if I start crying at work tomorrow?" And I said, "Let's go there. What is going to happen if you start crying at work tomorrow? Are people going to laugh at you? Are you going to get fired? Are you going to not be able to function? What are you going to do?"
Yeah. And
we realized that they could get up and go to the bathroom. They could talk to their supervisor, who'd also recently had a loss and would probably be quite understanding. And they work in a helping professions field, so work with a bunch of nice people.
Yeah.
And so the world wasn't going to end if that person did end up crying the next day at work or being angry or not being able to finish their day. So we sort of planned that. So even though I had prefaced it, it still felt shameful to this person that they were feeling that way. And that is a common experience that I see in my room, my therapy room, week after week after week, is that when people feel these normal feelings of grief, they feel so guilty about it because it feels wrong, because there's not a lot of people that are openly out there sort of talking about grief and what it really looks like.
Or they feel weak, because you wrote in the article, feeling all of your emotions doesn't make you weak, it makes you human.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's easy to forget. It's easy to forget that you're human and it's okay.
Yeah, well, right? That's the world we live in. We send this message to not cry.
You also feel alone. It's easy to feel alone in grief, right?
Yeah.
And forget that other people grieve and other people have loss.
So on Tuesday's episode, we talked about managing anxiety.
Yeah.
And one of my tips was to rethink social media. I think you've also got to rethink social media with grief for the same reasons as what I talked about in that episode. It can be triggering and you might not get a lot of support there. However, social media can also, particularly with grief, be a way to really feel heard and to really feel normal and to really feel connected with others who are grieving. So just on Instagram, Facebook, there's support groups, there's hashtags, there are people that connect with each other because of their grief, because they're openly saying, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm feeling, and they're connecting with others. So sometimes that social media piece can actually make you not feel so lonely.
I like what you wrote in this section. You said, if you need to express some anger, take up kickboxing or scream into a pillow.
Yeah, not anything you're feeling. The point there is that we send this message that feeling anger is not okay. Feeling anger means you're a criminal. No, feeling anger means that you're a human. And guess what? Anger is a normal human emotion. we have to be mindful about how we express that anger. We
Yeah.
can't go out and, take a golf club to someone's car windshield. We can't go and punch someone in the face when they put a 14th item on the 12 item or less belt at the supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
But we can scream into a pillow.
Yeah.
We can punch a punching bag. We can go for a run. We can take up kickboxing. Now they have these rooms where you can destroy things. You pay money and you go and you destroy things.
Those look fun.
Yeah. Or you could go hit a bucket of golf balls. Or last night you guys made me go to the field and had me hit baseballs with the new heavy bat that our son has. Yeah. And I was realizing as I was swinging it that gosh, if you have anger, that could feel like a great release, that kind of taking a bat to something.
Yeah.
I have to be able to make contact better than I was, but
you did pretty
but
good.
Even the few ones that I put out there, my point is to allow yourself to feel. Don't judge any of your feelings, because all of what you're feeling is normal. It's the expression, how you choose to express it, that you have to kind of be mindful about, but you've got to figure out a way to express it. And a lot of people say, well, I can't cry. I can't really cry in front of my kids. I say, you can go back and listen to what we've talked about grieving, children's grief. But I say the car is a great place to cry. You can turn up your radio. You can sob. There's a lot of people out there crying in their cars. You can cry in the shower is a great place to cry, to let it all out, but you've got to let it out somewhere.
You could also eat an orange in the shower.
That's a weird thing we kind of came across on.
We did. Okay. Can
BuzzFeed?
we talk about it for a second? So talk about the point of eating an orange in the shower. There was some sort of,
I don't know. Here's what happened. I was scrolling through social media one night and I came across, I think, a BuzzFeed video, and it said that eating an orange, a cold orange in a hot shower, is supposed to be relaxing and is supposed to soothe anxiety and help. I don't know. Was it supposed to release anything? Yeah. It was just supposed to be I guess probably,
refreshing.
Oxytocin and stuff like that. So I was like, this is funny. And Josh was like, I have to take a shower anyway. So he went and got an orange.
Cold orange out of the fridge.
Yeah. And ate it in the shower. And I literally picked up the peels this morning.
Fun.
You missed 2 peels.
I did.
They were on the edge of it. Nope.
I apologize. I don't know. It was kind of interesting. You don't have to worry about getting because that's the thing. You want, oranges are messy. And sometimes you'd rather
So there's a good analogy to grief there, right? Grief is messy. And so when an orange, when we eat an orange, if we eat an orange at work or in public, we have a napkin and we have to be really kind of thoughtful about how we're peeling it. And we don't want to
eating lunch at my desk. I definitely have oranges at my desk when no one else can see, because it's messy.
It's messy. Yeah. So too is grief.
Yes.
So if you need to eat your orange in the shower, have your grief in the shower.
Absolutely.
Okay. Also, that's a weird video.
Don't take your pillow in the shower and punch it.
You could. Why not?
And then you have a soggy pillow.
Maybe you have a shower pillow. I'm saying,
there you go.
Do whatever makes you feel your feelings. I'm not saying do whatever makes you feel better. I'm saying do whatever makes you feel your feelings. Don't break the law.
Right.
Or hurt anybody. But feel your feelings and allow yourself to feel those.
And be ready for them. You talked about that. And be prepared, because they could come up at any time. You talked about the song on the radio, but the summer, you wrote in the article, summer is the time of year where a lot of this stuff could come up, because it's such a fun time of year, and probably has a lot of great memories associated with it. It's connected to school vacation. It's connected to vacation in general.
Yep.
It's beautiful. The weather's nice. I mean, so much.
It's a very clear marcation of time.
Yeah.
And I think when we have marcations of time, that can be hard with our grief, because it's a memory point for us. Everyone's talking about it's summer. There's summer holidays, Memorial Day, July 4th, sort of kids getting out of school, kids going back to school, kind of, first day to the beach, all that kind of stuff, vacations, that it can be triggering and remind you of the times that you did those things with your loved one. Your loved one who's passed away.
Right.
And so that who's died, that can be a point that's going to bring it all up for you. And you could be someone who's quite far removed from the loss. You could be 3-4 years out.
Right.
Because I've had folks that come to me and that's their situation. It's been years and years and years. And they're coming to me and asking the same thing. Why am I still sad that, my mom died 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, because your mom died.
Right.
And you were close to her. And, you lived your whole life with her. And now for the past 4 years, she hasn't been here for you and your life's been going on. So it's normal to feel that way. There's no getting over it. And your feelings are going to come up sort of maybe cyclically, maybe out of the blue. And when you feel them again, it's okay. It's normal. They're not going to stay there at that level forever.
Right. All right, Jenny, let's keep going because we have 3 more.
Okay.
And we're already at 40 minutes.
Okay.
All right.
I thought this was going to be a short one.
I know. Tip number 3 is be social or don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's normal for people to not want to socialize after a loss. And it's normal for people to want to socialize after a loss. I would say there's no right or wrong way in terms of how do you define how much is okay to socialize. Just like I was talking about with Bethany, normal for her to go out, normal for her to also want to date again, normal for her to want to go out and have fun and, have like a fun girls' night out. It's also normal for her to turn down invitations and not want to go places.
Right.
There's no kind of rule book there. So if you do accept an invitation to go out, though, I tell folks to sort of give yourself an escape route, give yourself permission to leave, because you might be caught off guard. A song might come on the radio at the restaurant, or someone might walk in that reminds you of your loved one, or nothing might happen. And just all of a sudden you're there and you're in the bathroom crying. Well,
and this is the time of year that these opportunities to be social happens.
Yeah, I feel like the world wakes up in the summer. Like there's tons of, look at our past weekend. We were out, we had events every single night.
Every day we saw other people besides our family.
Which is probably why I'm exhausted.
I know.
But this because it was, but it was really the first weekend of summer, right? It was the first weekend we had good weather. So everyone is out and having barbecues.
It was 4 days of great weather. It was Memorial Day. I think we attended 2 or 3 different cookouts.
Still no cocktail parties, though.
I know. But we, it's the time of year. And during the winter, people sort of shut in, right? It's cold. The weather's not great.
Right.
But the summer, there's lots of activities going on. So lots of opportunities for you to be social or not.
Yeah. So I encourage people to try to be social. The danger here is you don't want to isolate yourself. When you isolate yourself completely, that can lead to depression. Depression is different than grief. You can feel depressed, but I'm talking about depression.
Okay, that's a really good point to bring up. I'm glad you said that. And you don't have to dive way deep into the diagnosis of depression, but grief is not depression.
Right.
People who are grieving could also be depressed.
Right.
Depression could be affected by grief, but they're not one and the same.
Right. Just because you are grieving someone and you are feeling depressed does not mean that you have clinical depression.
Can you actually talk about is there a mental health diagnosis of grief?
So it's a point of controversy within the sort of diagnostic field, and I have to make diagnoses for patients because I bill insurance. And insurance says, look, if you want us to pay for therapy, you have to have a diagnosis.
Right.
So you have to give your patients a clinical diagnosis in order for us to pay for services. And you've got to make that diagnosis the very first time you see them, or else you can't bill them. Great job, insurance companies. Yeah. Great job. And so it's kind of gone back and forth whether there's like grieving diagnoses. I think in general, when you're talking about the distinction between sort of grief and depression, you're looking at sort of hopelessness. And if someone is feeling really hopelessness and their self-worth is really diminished, they don't have any self-worth. So they are hopeless about their future. They're hopeless about ever finding any joy in life. And they feel like they're basically a failure and a big old pile of poop. If you are that person, you need to get some support for yourself.
Yeah.
Because that might be more than just grief. And just grief is heavy enough.
Yeah.
There might be something else going on there. And if that's someone in your life, reach out to them. Because that's an important distinction.
Thank you for
that hopelessness and that sort of self-worth piece.
Okay.
Really low motivation, things like that. that can initially look the same as someone who's just really sad with their grief. But really, when you start to kind of peel away the layers, these are people who like aren't showering. They're not eating at all for days and days. They're not taking out the trash, like things like that.
Are our teenagers depressed? You saw where my thought was going there. Okay. So tip number 4.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
I don't think I was done about the social piece.
I apologize.
So you don't want to isolate yourself. So try to socialize a little bit.
Yes.
And also
there's
recognize
lots of opportunities during the summer to do so.
But also recognize that the people around you might be kind of walking gingerly around you and might be tiptoeing and might not might not know how to reach out to you. So they might not invite you to their stuff because they might not want to make you feel bad. They might be afraid to. So don't be afraid to be the one to extend the social invitation. And don't be afraid to pick one person at an event that you're going to and say, look, I need you to be my person tonight at this thing. I don't know how it's going to go for me. I might fall apart. I might be in the bathroom crying. I might just have to slip out and not say goodbye to anybody. Can you be my person?
Yeah.
If someone starts, steering the conversation somewhere I don't want to go, can you help me steer it away? Don't be afraid to ask someone in your network for that kind of support because they don't know what to do. They want to support you, but they have no idea how to. So don't be afraid to give them some tips there.
I like that. All right. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Tip number 4 is speak up.
Yeah. So that really kind of is exactly what I was just saying, except extend it to not just kind of going out and socializing, but really extending it to your entire social network. This is a point of struggle for almost everyone I've ever seen for grief support. Not only are they grieving the loss of their loved one, they're grieving the loss of their friends. Because for so many of them, they come in and they say, I'm so disappointed in my friends. They're not showing up. They're not calling. They're not texting. Or if they're calling and texting, they're asking me, baseline questions and they're not really asking how I'm doing. They're not really wanting to talk about my loved one. They're just wanting to talk about themselves. They're not really helping me. They're not just coming over and, bringing me groceries or, fixing my garden or something like that. They're just not doing anything. And I'm really surprised because I would have done stuff for them. And so people then get sort of the secondary loss of their friendship. And it's really hard because what I say to people is that all of the research or most of the research shows that the support networks want desperately to support their friends who are grieving, but they have no idea how to do it. And so what they think is helpful is to say, let me know if you need anything.
Yeah.
And to sort of back off and to let the griever take the lead. And the research shows the opposite, that the grievers don't know how to take the lead, don't want to take the lead, can't remember how to take the lead, and they really need their support network to step up.
So then what is the result is a disconnect.
Total disconnect.
No one talks to anybody.
Nobody talks to anybody. Friendships fall apart. And then new friendships come out of that. And often it's the people that were sort of peripheral friends or acquaintances that kind of know what to do with grief. They kind of move into the inner circle.
Yeah.
And then the other friends get hurt and feel like they've been replaced and don't understand. And it becomes sort of this messy thing that happens. Communication can avoid that.
Yeah.
But it means that often, because it's the griever that I'm seeing, I put the responsibility kind of on the griever's shoulders. And I talk about, who are you willing to ask for some help from? From whom are you willing to ask for help? Right. And what kinds of help are you willing to ask for? Because
if your friends haven't had a similar loss, they're not going to be able to predict or know.
Right.
What you need.
Or if your friends are people that are stuffers and have just stuffed all their feelings and not allowed themselves to process, they don't quite understand yet what needs to happen around grief. So speak up. And I get that can be really, really hard.
Very vulnerable.
It means being incredibly vulnerable. And so I'm not saying that you have to go post it on Facebook, although maybe that's what you choose to do. Post it to everybody. Maybe it's just one friend that you say, look, I'm feeling really alone. And I feel like not many people in my life have any idea how to support me.
Right.
And I don't really know what I need, but what I know is I need more than what people are giving me. Here are some things that I need. I think if it's a good friend, they're going to step up to the plate and appreciate that they've now been tasked with a way to support you. They know kind of what to do. They don't have to avoid it anymore.
Well, you wrote in the article, your support network will be delighted to have been given a specific way to be useful and supportive of you or for you. And I think that's important. I mean, because people people haven't experienced a loss don't know what to do. And if they care about you, which I'm sure they do, your friends will be happy to have been given a specific way to help you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And then the relationship doesn't suffer, and you still stay connected.
And you feel supported and they feel good, and you've sort of taught them how to appropriately provide support to someone who's grieving. Or at least provide support to you as their friend. So that's a hard one. It's an important one and can really shift everything for folks. And
it might be opposite of what you might think, right? Like, I just lost somebody my loved one died. Everybody should be sort of taking care of me. Why do I have to do the work? Right?
Which is a lot of what people struggle with in the office. Like, I don't want in my office. I don't want to. They should be stepping up. Why are they such bad friends that they're not stepping up? Why don't I mean enough to them? And look, sometimes that could be true. Maybe they are bad friends. Maybe they don't care about you as much as you thought they did.
Because how scary is it to talk to somebody about loss? Like, you and I do this for a living. You much more than I, but because of our professions, we're very familiar with loss, death, end of life care, death care. We understand it. And so for us, when we have someone in our life that has lost somebody, we feel comfortable reaching out, expressing condolences, all that stuff. But if you're not somebody that is familiar with it like we are, it's got to be scary. It's got to be scary to reach out and offer help or offer assistance or even offer condolences. It's because that person, I think, feels just as vulnerable.
Well, it's also, so it's interesting because I don't think that I'm a great friend to people that are grieving. I think I'm a great clinician and a great teacher to students and to patients that are grieving. But I think, that's an area that I don't think I do a great job with as a friend because of my personality, right? Because I'm like super sensitive and I am a private person, even though I'm doing a podcast where I'm sharing my entire life and I have a blog, but like private, like face to face person. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't like people to just show up at my house.
Yeah.
So, and if you're my friend, you hopefully know this, but like, I love you. Don't just show up at my house. Don't pull in my driveway and text me.
Yeah.
Text me and ask me if it's okay for you to pull in my driveway. Right. Don't just show. I mean, like, I got to like put my bra on and I got to like look, I'm not presentable all the time when I'm home. Anyway, so that's like me as a private person, and kind of what people that are grieving need is for someone to not be that way.
Yeah.
So for me, like, that's just a hard road to navigate, because I'm so private and don't want to be intrusive. I don't like when people are intrusive to me.
I guess that makes sense.
Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? So,
yeah.
I just wanted to reflect that back, that I don't feel like I do a good job.
But I think that's different. Yeah. And sorry.
I feel like I do a good job talking and giving space to talk about it, but the sort of functional stuff, I don't know that I'm great.
And you don't feel uncomfortable having that conversation.
Absolutely not.
Or reaching out to offer this specific assistance like we've talked about before. But most people, I guess my point is, for those that are trying to manage your grief during the summer, understand that your friends are very scared to have that conversation with you.
And that, like, this could be a challenge for them based on their sort of lack of experience with grief and loss, also their personality factors, also their own loss experience too. And so it may have very little, it doesn't necessarily mean, let me say this a different way, how their feelings about you and how much they love you and how important you are to them are not directly reflected in how well they do at supporting you.
Mm-hmm.
Like those two things could be very, very different.
Yes. All right, Jenny, we've reached the final tip.
Yes.
Which is be kind to yourself.
Yeah, and we talked about this at length in our last episode, on Tuesday, about anxiety, that we, self-care is not selfish. It's really important that you are really kind to yourself. You don't judge yourself for what you're feeling. You don't try to put a time limit on it. You don't allow yourself to get into a negative headspace where you're saying, what's wrong with me? Why am I still feeling this way? I'm a freak. I'm weak. You really are kind of gentle and kind to yourself as if you would be to someone else that was grieving.
Right.
And that takes real kind of effort to acknowledge and think about, how am I going to be nice to myself today? What am I going to do that's really going to kind of nurture me today? That's going to take care of me. That's going to give me permission to feel.
Did you say this already? Stop judging yourself, or don't judge yourself.
I think I did,
yeah.
But it's worth saying again, even if I did it.
Like I like what you wrote here in the article. You said, watch out for negative self-talk or saying or thinking things like, I shouldn't be crying like this, or this shouldn't bother me so much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just why start? I mean, you've got, all of these environmental pressures just to move on and have closure and stop grieving. Don't put that on yourself.
Yeah. And often my question to folks when they come in and it kind of becomes revealed that this is their negative thought pattern, that they're shoulding all over themselves, right? They're saying that I should be doing this. I shouldn't be doing that. I say, how's that working out for you?
Yeah.
Right. That negative self-talk often doesn't feel good for them. It's not motivating them to make any changes in their life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not making them feel better. It's really only making them feel worse. So how's it working out for them? It's not. So let's see if we can stop doing that.
Right.
And one way to stop doing that is to start kind of allowing yourself permission to be kind to yourself, to kind of heal yourself, to sort of be kind of like a parent, kind of this whole concept of like your inner child is sort of big in the therapy field right now. This sort of notion that like inside all of us is our inner child, our sort of inner wounded child, and sort of unresolved conflict from our childhood. And we have to sort of nurture that inner child. Kind of think that's sort of true when we're talking about grief. Like if we're adults, we kind of have to parent ourselves in a way, like in a nurturing kind of parent way. And that requires us to be kind to ourselves. So that's what I mean when I say that.
And I think that it's really important to highlight what you wrote in the article about the most challenging aspect of grief is that it doesn't go away. And that's part, I think that's part of being kind to yourself, understanding that it doesn't go away. And then the analogy that you had shared with us earlier about the rock or the boulder, and that's part of it. If you understand that and accept that, that sort of leaves you room to be kind to yourself. And some of those things you mentioned, actually, again, similar to self-care in episode 21, yoga, go for a walk, exercise, journal, read, play music, listen to music. And you also wrote here, start therapy or group therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or I would also say connect with people online, like strangers who've gone through a loss like this. That can be really powerful for people to connect with others. Yeah. And one of the great sort of outgrowths of this podcast experience has been that I've been able to connect with a huge grief community on Instagram of people that are just out there sharing their grief experience with each other. And it's really beautiful. It's really kind of normalizing the experience. So just even going on Instagram and typing in grief is really going to open up some powerful kind of connections for people.
And there's what I found is lots of great grief podcasts as well.
Yes, there's a lot out there. Yeah. So I think the sort of takeaway here is what I end the article with. Remember that you are human and deserve compassion, especially from yourself.
Yes, that's important. And it's okay to feel broken.
Well, because you are broken. After you've suffered a loss, you are broken. Doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're grieving.
The most powerful, I think, statements in grief and managing grief is accepting the simple facts, right? Like you are broken. And to bring it back to our Pint-Sized Perspectives, we did the review of the Netflix show Dead to Me, and there was a scene that the grief therapist, whose name is Wayne, by the way. I think we said Kevin or Jeff on that episode.
I might have said Glenn. I don't know.
Glenn.
I'm really terrible with names. I'm awful with names.
His name is Wayne. And he said, Jen, the main character, said something about, I wish he had left me, or I feel like he left me.
No, they were talking about the fact that it had come out after after her husband's death that he had been having an affair.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how she was kind of robbed of the opportunity to know what her life would have been like.
If he left
and
me.
she said, he might have left me. And he
Wayne
said he did
leave you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, wow, so powerful in that moment. Like, yes, I mean, that's loss. He left you. He did leave you.
Right.
So, and it was like, must be this therapist thing, because as soon as I said it's okay to feel broken, you said, because you are broken. Like, understanding what this. Well,
we do go through training.
Like, you have like licensure and a degree and stuff.
Yeah, we have to like take exams and stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
So you know what you're talking about?
Kind of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, although there are a lot of therapists out there that
don't. Maybe?
I don't know how they pass their stuff, but
anyway, so that was really great. I really like this blog article. It's sort of simple.
Thank you.
And I like how you redesigned it to fit the summer, because the summer is just as a risky time, so to speak, as the holidays, where it could be tough for someone.
Yeah, I mean, the holidays, like the winter holidays, the Thanksgiving, the Christmas, the Hanukkah, all that stuff. It's like all about joy and family and all that stuff. It's really in your face, but I feel like that's also kind of what this time of year is too. Really is. And so that's worth kind of talking about. It also, this time of year also encompasses Mother's Day and Father's Day, which can also be challenging for folks that have lost a mother or a father, or their spouse that is also had been a co-parent with them. Those are really challenging times as well.
And I know for those that like celebrate Easter or Passover or something, but the later in the season those are, those could also sort of start the whole season.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I know for Easter for us, usually part of it involves being outside. If it's nice enough, so that does sort of start things going. And you get Mother's Day. I didn't even think of that. That's a good point.
It's also kind of wedding season too. Mm-hmm. So like these big, lots of kind of anniversaries, important days. Yeah, there's lots of monumental moments. So as I was really thinking about that article, I was thinking, it really is. There's some challenges around this part of the year as well when it comes to grief. But grief is difficult at any point in the year too.
Yeah, I think that was good of you to republish this.
Thanks.
Yeah. Do you have anything else for us on this?
So much more we could talk about. This is really just sort of the tip of the iceberg. There will be more to come.
An hour now. So.
Okay. All right.
Do you want to? Are you done for today then?
Well, I think there's so many different components of grief. So this is sort of the starter, kind of what you can do if you are grieving and you kind of have no idea what to do. This was sort of a good place to start. And then we can kind of dive deeper in future episodes.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for today. Then thank you guys so much for listening. You can learn more on this by checking out Jenni's article. It is entitled, Am I Normal? How to Manage Your Grief This Summer? And you can find that on medium.com. You can go to medium.com/@JenniBrennan LICSW or check out the many great grief articles on our website, changingperspectivesblog.com. And just as a reminder, this episode was for education and entertainment purposes only. Should you need additional support, please contact your healthcare provider for information and referrals. Please follow us on Facebook at Changing Perspectives Podcast and on Instagram at Changing Perspectives Blog. You can check out our website again by going to changingperspectivesblog.com or send us an email to changingpodcast@gmail.com. Stay tuned to Changing Perspectives. We release episodes on Mondays and Thursdays. Lots of great content coming up. Don't forget to check out Disney Bird Studios on Facebook to hang out at that pinned post for listener mails, listener submissions. And go ahead and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. And we will see you next time. Say bye, Jenni.
Bye, Jenni.
The Changing Perspectives podcast is produced, recorded, and edited by Disney Bird Studios. Whitman, Massachusetts. Visit Dizzy Bird Studios on Facebook, facebook.com/DizzyBirdStudios.
Welcome to Cinemarks. If you have your tickets, take your seats. The show is about to begin.
You ever dance for the devil in the pale moonlight?
Every week, Troy Adams is joined by an array of nerdy podcasting co-hosts.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
They discuss films and television from the past, present, and future. It's always something different on the slate.
Life is a box of chocolates, Forrest. You never know what you're gonna get.
It's always kept fun, spirited, and they attempt to be entertaining.
60% of the time, it works. Every time.
You can follow the Cinemarks on Twitter and Instagram at CinemarksPod.
Go ahead. Make my day.
The Cinemarks podcast is available on Wooshka, iTunes, Spotify, and most other podcasting platforms. We hope you enjoy the show.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.